Today I'm going to show you how to make these soleless sandals, barefoot sandals, foot decoration, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to show you how to make them. And it's a very simple, basic process. You are going to have to be able to judge on your own foot the sizes of the beads. So you can do generally what I'm doing, but as you're doing it, you're going to need to try it on your foot, or if you're making it for someone else, basically know their measurements so that you can do this. My foot is about a size 8, 7.5, 8, something like that. So the difference is some people's feet are long and skinny and some people are shorter and fatter. So the part that goes over the top of the foot may need a little adjusting, and the part that comes right up around the heel may need a little adjusting too. So basically this will go through your middle toe here and then up over the foot and around the ankle like so. So that should look like. These will hang pretty once they're on your foot too. I'm just got them all mangled right now, but they hang really pretty. So I'm going to give you the basic measurements, the basic numbers of beads that I've done. I'll show you exactly what I'm doing, but keep in mind that this will call for some modification because of different sizes of feet. So this is what we're going to make today. Now I have used little metal beads, little metal feathers or leaves, whatever you want to call them, for mine. They're like a little charm. They've got a little loop around the top here. Let me show you. So it would be like using something top drilled, or you can use another charm that you can just drop on there. It doesn't have to be what I'm using. I have also made, just to make sure, because I'm using a couple things not everyone can probably get their hands on. I'm using 4mm round metal beads that have a pretty wide hole. However, these are just like 6/0 seed beads, so you can use a 6/0 seed bead instead of the metal beads. I've also made another shoeless sandal. I made this one a little bit different, but basically the same. So I used some rondelle crystals and I used 6/0 seed beads so that you can see that the 6/0 seed bead works perfectly. It drops over the crimp bead like I'm going to show you. It does everything that my metal 4mm round does. So if you like the metal look, you can always get a metallic 6/0 seed bead also. But the 6/0 seed bead works well. This is a Toho cream colored 6/0 seed bead. And then I used some top drilled crystal for my dangles here. And it works out just fine. It works really pretty. I also changed the way that I went up around the top. Instead of having it clasp in the back here, like this one does, making both sides exactly the same length and clasping in the back, I made one side longer, connected chain to it, and then made one side shorter. Now this will connect on the side on my ankle, so that if I put this towards the inside of my ankle and this towards the outside, I can connect towards the outside of my ankle instead of right in the back of my heel. You can do that too. You can adjust the length by adding or subtracting the amount of chain. Now I know I'm talking a lot, but this is very important. So because I'm going to get a million questions on how to do all this stuff. So hang in there and just listen to this part because it's going to help you a lot. And if you have a longer length of chain on both pieces, you can make it for different size people. So you can make it more generic so that people can wear it regardless of the size and shape of their foot. Of course, this part right here is going to have to just do for them. It's going to have to end where it ends, but this will make it more adjustable. So let's go ahead and look at what we need for this project. Okay, for this project you will need 2 lobster claw clasps, and I have a pretty good size lobster claw clasp here. I think they're like, let me see, I will measure them really quickly and I'll tell you how big they are from loop to, they're about 10mm from the top here to the bottom of the loop here, so they're pretty good size. And then I have 16 charms. So mine are the leaf charms that I showed you earlier. You can use top drilled crystal, you can use Miyuki drops, you can use whatever you want to put as a little dangle, or you don't have to put a dangle whatsoever. You could just put all seed beads. You could put a little bit bigger. Right where I have these, you could put like a 4mm round pearl, something like that. Doesn't matter. It is the basic design that matters, so that you can modify it any way you want. And then I'm going to use 8/0 seed beads and 11/0 seed beads. These are both Toho. This one is an opaque blue turquoise, and this one is a nickel plate. Then I'm using the 4mm rounds, like I told you. However, this is more like a 6/0 seed bead, so I recommend that you use a 6/0 seed bead unless you have the exact same beads I do, which I'm sure maybe someone out there does. But if you do not, then use a 6/0 seed bead. And then some size 2 crimp beads. I'm using Beadalon size 2 silver tone crimp beads for mine. You will also need several tools for this and a length of chain. I'm going to cut this chain in half, make it about 1.5 inches on for 2 pieces so that I can use it for both of my sandals. So have a big enough piece of chain that you can cut it in half in equal portions. And the chain is totally up to you. If you want to make it shorter or longer, it doesn't matter. It just depends on how adjustable you want your sandal to be. Then you will need some Beadalon, or it doesn't have to be Beadalon. You'll need some beading wire. It can be tiger's tail, it can be soft flex, it can be whatever it wants. It needs to be medium or finer size. You do not want it to be really large, and because then you'll have to use a larger size of crimp beads. So if you're using a larger size of wire than then you're going to need a 3 or 4 crimp bead. I am using the 7-strand Beadalon. It's kind of a medium size wire. Then you will need, for your chain, to separate it and make it the length you want it, you will need a couple of pliers. I'm using a flat nose and a chain nose. You will need some wire cutters for your beading wire, and you will need a crimping tool. I am using the basic regular size crimping tool simply because I am using a size 2 crimp. If you are going to use a bigger one, you will need a mighty crimper. Or if you're going to use a smaller one, you can use a micro crimper. But for size 2 and for what I'm doing, just a regular crimping tool should work just fine. Now, let's go ahead and get started with this project. To start, I have cut a 2.5 foot piece of wire. So I just laid on my ruler twice, so you can see 1, 2, and a half. So that's what I've cut. It's going to be a little long, but it's better to have a little extra wire than not enough wire. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to pick up 44 11/0 seed beads onto my piece of wire, and then I'm going to bring them to the center of my wire. Now, if you feel like that's going to be too big or too small for going around your toe, then you can adjust that, and I will show you in a minute how I do that. But right now for me, since I've already made one, I know that 44 seed beads are going to work just fine for me. So I'm going to take the end of my wire and I'm going to pick up seed beads until I have 44 of them, and then I will be back. Okay, so I have picked up 44 seed beads. And I am just going to take my piece of wire, put the ends together, and center these in the middle of my wire here. Now at this point, you will want to place this around your toe and make sure it'll slide easier over your middle toe, and still have about this much room on the top of your foot just below your toe. And we're also going to add, so you might want to wait just a minute to do that, because we're also going to add a couple of 8/0 seed beads on either side, and it will be easier for you to judge the size. And then you can add or subtract the beads as you want. So put 2 8/0s on one side of your wire, 2 8/0s on the other side of your wire. Drag these down to the middle, put your ends together, like so, and then pick up 1 8/0 seed bead and put both wires through that 1 8/0 seed bead, like so. And bring this down to your loop, making sure that the ends of your wire are pretty even. I mean, if you got like a millimeter, shorter than the other, that's fine. But just pull them as close as you can to being together on the end here. This is what you should have now. Now slide this over your toe. Make sure that it slides over very loosely, and that right about here, this part lays on the top of the foot, just a little bit below the toe, so that it'll slide on and off nice and easily, and give a little bit of decoration on the top of the foot right here. Once you have that, then you are going to pick up a crimp bead. Let me get one of my crimp beads out. You might want to be prepared and actually put some out. Since I didn't, put one over here. And take both of your wires again and slide that crimp bead over both ends, like so. Get a little closer. And bring this down to your beads. Now, you want to organize your beads on your piece to where the one bead that you slid over the two wires, the 1/8, is centered between the 2/8 on either side, and then spread your wires apart so that they are lying parallel inside the crimp bead and not on top of each other. So you don't want them crisscrossed, so I just kind of spread them apart. Now, it's hard to keep this all totally in focus here. We will also need a crimp plier. I'll have to add that to the list of our supplies. You'll need a regular size crimp plier if you're using a size 2 crimp bead, or crimping tool, I guess it's called. So I'm going to put this together like so. I'm going to take the flat end, as you can see they're curved, I'm going to take this flat end, put it against the 8/0 seed beads. I'm going to also pull down on it, pull on my wire, push down on my beads, basically right there. Have my crimp bead in the second hole on your pliers, so the one closest to your handle, the divot in your pliers, you're going to put over your crimp bead. Pull and push and crimp. That way you have a nice tight crimp and you don't have any movement in your beads here. Then once you have crimped your wires together, as you can see, I have a little tube. Let me show you. I have a little tube around each wire now on my crimp bead. Now I'm going to go into the first hole, this one right here. So the second hole is here, the first hole is here, and I'm going to put that on my crimp bead, and I'm going to squeeze those two tubes together, like so. Now I'm going to take the wires and I'm going to split them apart, like so, and just kind of organize it to where my beads look good and my wires are split apart so that I can now make kind of a V shape with my beads. The next thing I'm going to do is, we'll have to actually spread those apart again in a second, but the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to pick up one of my 4mm round, or your 6/0 seed bead. If you don't have a really wide hole 4mm round, use a 6/0 seed bead, because it's not going to work if you do not have a pretty good size hole in here. And 6/0 seed beads will have a nice size hole. Put it on both wires and slide it down over your crimp bead, so it covers your crimp bead. Of course, you can use a crimp bead cover, but this is just an easier way of doing that. And then I'll split my wires apart again, like so. Now I will begin stringing on either side. I'm going to get my other piece here so I can remember exactly what I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an 11/0 on either thread. So with this wire, I'm going to pick up an 11/0, and with my left wire, I'll pick up an 11/0. My left hand isn't quite as coordinated as my right hand. And then I'll just bring these down. And then I'm going to pick up a 6/0 seed bead or a nice 4mm round hairs and slide those down on either side. And just make sure they kind of butt up against your 6/0 until we actually secure this. They're not going to stay there, but just, you know, have your wires split apart enough to where they'll fall down there nice, like so. And then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 on either thread again, or either wire. I guess this is not thread. Boy, my left hand is really not coordinated. Okay, I'm going to drop those down. And then I'm going to pick up 3 8/0 seed beads on each wire. So basically I'm just going to string a little decoration up that goes over the top of the foot, and I'm going to do the same on both wires so that it's symmetrical. So 3 on each wire and slide it down. And then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead on either wire. Drop them down. Pick up my 6/0 seed bead. I'm just going to call these 6/0s because that's going to be your best bet if you don't have the same size metal beads that I have. And then pick up an 11/0 on either side. And now I'm going to pick up 5 8/0s on both of my wires. 2, 3, 4, 5, and drop it down. And then I'm going to pick up 5 on this wire, and I'm going to do it with my right hand because otherwise you guys are going to be watching me fumble around forever. 4, 5, like so, and then I'm going to repeat that again. I'm going to pick up an 11/0, a 4mm round, and an 11/0 on one wire, and then the same with the other wire. 11/0, 4mm round, and 11/0. Drop those down, and then I will pick up 5 8/0 seed beads again on either side. Make sure that's what I did on this one. Yep. Drop them down, and again I will pick up an 11/0, my round bead, 11/0, drop it, 11/0, excuse me, 6/0, allergies are getting me, sorry guys, it's that time of year again, 11/0, drop it down, and then I will pick up 3 8/0 seed beads on either thread this time and drop them down, and 3 again. Now at this point I'm going to pick up my 11/0, 6/0, 11/0, and then on either thread, and then I will measure this on my foot, or I don't have to because I've already done it, but you should measure it on your foot. Make sure that it lays across the top of your foot nicely. It has it should cover over the top of your foot without going all the way up to where your ankle is, so where your leg attaches to your foot. You want this to just lay across the top between the toes and probably about, let's see, halfway up the foot. I'll measure it with my ruler with my other one so I can tell you. Basically, it should be about three inches long for my foot. It will bring it right up to about 2 inches below where my leg and my ankle meet. So just over the top of your foot. Put it on, you'll see, you'll know how to judge it. You can refer to the picture that I posted in the beginning of the video too, so you can see what it looks like on the foot. Now, this side I messed up. I need to pick up an 11/0, 4mm round, and an 11/0. Make sure both sides are the same. Make sure your beads, you didn't miscount your beads. It looks like so, like this. Let me back off a little bit. And then I am going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead and drop it down. So I'm going to put both of my wires together and drop down an 8/0 seed bead, like so. Now, you can see from the joint here to the joint here, I have not quite 3 inches, so it's about 2.5, not quite 2, right around 2.5 inches from the seed bead to my 8/0 here. Now that's right for my foot. Now if you have a very long foot, you're going to have to make this a little longer. Just do another section of, do this one 5 and then do your section of 3 8/0s and draw it together with 1 8/0. So instead of doing 3 8/0s, 5, 5, 3, do 3, 5, 5, 5, 3. That will give you some more length if you have a much bigger foot than I do, or a long foot, or whatever. And then place it on your foot and look at it and see if it looks good. You can hold this bead down, make it tight, place it over your toe, lay this over the top of your foot, and see what it looks like. Then make sure they're not crossed. You don't want this to be crossed, unless you do. I mean, if you do want that middle piece crossed, but I don't. So I'm going to make sure that they're nice like this. Got my wires crossed everywhere, like so. Now I'm going to pick up another crimp bead, and I'm going to slide it down over both beads. At this point, I don't worry about laying them parallel too much. Oops, I missed one of my wires. Let me get both of my wires in this crimp bead here. At this point, I don't worry too much about having them perfectly parallel inside there, because it may twist on this part down here, and I don't want it to twist. So I'm just going to get the crimp bead in there as best as I can, separate my wires somewhat, make sure that nothing is twisted. So if your wires cross inside this crimp bead, so be it. Just as long as this is laying correctly and you can spread your wires out on top and separate them. Then I'm going to grab my crimping tool again. I'm going to lay this flat end towards where my beads are, where my 8/0 is. And I'm going to place that crimp bead in the second divot on my crimp plier, like so. And then I'm going to pull, I'm pushing down towards my beads, towards this way, with my crimping tool, and I'm pulling with my wires spread apart a little bit here, and then I'm going to crimp. That will make sure that I have good tension on here and I don't have a bunch of slack, so my beads are going to move around and look funny. Now you can see that I have encased both of the wires, let me get even closer, and little separate tubes on my crimp bead right there, inside my crimp bead. Then I'm going to go to the top divot, turning my plier sideways so that I now can squish the two divots together. So I'm going to squish those two little tubes together, like so. Now, I'm going to get another one of my 6/0 seed beads, my metal bead, and I'm going to put both the wires together and slide this right over the top of that crimp bead, like so. And then I will begin stringing on either side again. So back off a little bit. So now my combination here that I did above this one is I picked up one 11-0 seed bead, and then I picked up a silver dangle. So you, whatever you're using for your dangle, or if you don't want to use a dangle, then just use more seed beads or use a 4mm round pearl or crystal or whatever you want. And I'm going to slide this on here. Now your count of beads, if you don't use a dangle top drilled or something, your count of beads are going to be different than my count. So you're just going to have to try it on your ankle and see if it comes up around, lays the way you want it to, and then you will know when you've had enough and when to crimp on your clasping. So this is really just very subjective. It just depends on what you're using and how you want it to look and what size your foot is. It's just your basic design. So now I'm going to pick up two 11-0s. Oops, that's 3, and drop it down. And then I'm going to pick up one of my round beads here. Drop it down. Then I'm going to pick up 2 more 11-0 seed beads, and I'm going to pick up another leaf, drop it down, excuse me, 2 more seed beads, a 6mm, or a 6-0, excuse me, drop it down, 2 more 11-0 seed beads, and a leaf. I believe I was doing 2, yes I was, okay, and a leaf. Drop it down, and 2 more 11-0 seed beads. So do I have 4 on there or 3? I have 3, okay. And then 2 more 11-0 seed beads, a 4mm round, and then I'm going to pick up 5, let's see, 1, 2, I'm going to pick up 5 8-0s, drop it down, and then I'm going to pick up a 6-0, and then I'm going to pick up 2 11-0s, and 1 more leaf, and 2 11-0s, and a 6-0. And then from this point, I'm just going to continue putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 8-0s, and then a 4mm round, 7 8-0s, 4mm round, 7 8-0s, 4mm round, all the way until I get to the top here. Up at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I put 6. So I'm going to have to look at mine. I put 6 here, and then I put 4 here, and between my 4mm rounds. Now you can string this any way you'd like to get it to the length that you need so that it goes behind your foot. So from here all the way to the top, you want this now to go over the top of your, or around your ankle and all the way to the back of your heel. So as you're doing this, you need to measure it on your foot or on a ruler, however long, if you took someone's measurements and you're making this, however long you need this to be, so that you have some movement on your ankle. This is not to be tight, because as you walk, your ankle is going to flex, and as you point and flex your foot, your ankle is going to flex. So you need some room in the back. You don't want it to be extremely loose so that it falls off your heel, but you want it to lay on your ankle, up around your ankle nice and loosely. So go ahead and continue stringing. I will show you exactly what I string when I come back, but continue stringing until you have the length that you want, excluding about a half an inch for clasping. Okay, so for me, I have put on, after I did my embellishment here, then I put on 7 8-0 seed beads, 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4 with an 8-0 seed bead, or excuse me, a 6-0 seed bead in between. And then I ended with a 6-0 seed bead and put 2 8-0 seed beads on. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to clasp the end. This comes right to the back of my heel. So like maybe just a tiny bit before the very back of my heel. So I'm going to go ahead and I make sure that it's loose enough that I could move my foot a little bit. So I just slipped it on my toe and looked to where the back of this came to the back of my foot, and that's how I measured it. Now I am going to pick up a 4mm round, and I'm going to drop it down, and then I am going to pick up a crimp bead, and I'm going to slide that crimp bead down. Now these crimp beads want to fall into your 6-0 seed beads, so you're going to have to make sure that it doesn't. Just lay it to where it's a little ways away, and then pick up another 6-0 seed bead. And what I do is I just kind of hold on to my crimp bead, and then I grab my clasp or your chain, you could do either one, and slide your clasp through, or yeah, just put your wire through the clasp. Make sure that when you do it that your lobster claw lever is to the outside. So I'm just pointing it up. That way it's easier to handle. And then I'm going to go back through, whoops, excuse me, I'm not going to go back through the clasp. I'm going to go into this first 6-0 seed bead. Let's see if I can get you closer here. So I'm going around my clasp into the 6-0, into the crimp bead, into the 6-0 beneath it, and then I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to hold on to the clasping, and I'm going to pull until I have just, enough loop here so that my clasp will move. Make sure I don't have any slack in my main part of my beads here. Hold this nice and secure. Then I'm going to grab my crimping pliers, and I'm going to do the same thing I had been doing, except for this time I'm doing it between 2 beads. So make sure everything looks good, and then go in between the 2 beads, hold on to your crimp bead in the second divot on your crimp pliers, and pull your wire to where you want it to be. Arrange everything exactly how you want it, and then crimp, like so. Let me get you close so you can see what I've got. So if you can see that, there's my divot right there. Well, actually it's upside down. There's my divot right there. And now I'm going to go with the first hole on, or the first divot on my pliers, and I'm going to squeeze them together like so. Now, after you have them squeezed together, your 6-0 should kind of slide over the top of it. If it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal. As you wear it, it will. I mean, it'll move around. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's still pretty. So then we're going to grab our wire and cut it off really close to that 6-0 seed bead it's coming out of. And you have one side of your sandal already done. Now you should have a little bit of slack in your wire. That's the way that we did this top piece right here, so that it slides around over the crimp bead so that you can't see it. It also gives a little bit of movement between the beads when that happens, and that's what you want, because if it's too tight, you'll break your wire. So that allows for a little bit of movement. You'll see that I have a little bit of space here and there, and that's good. You won't see it as you're wearing it, but it will help keep your piece from breaking. Now, you're going to do the exact same thing on this side. Once we have went ahead and strung all of this, I'll come back and we'll clasp the chain on this side. And of course, if you feel like this is too short, you want to make it this way, but it's too short, you can always add more chain. I have like I said, about 1.5 inches of chain. You can put 2 inches of chain. You can put however much chain you want to extend the back of your sandal so that it actually fits you or somebody else very well, and it's adjustable. So go ahead and string this side and we'll be back. Okay, so as you can see, I have strung the second half that goes up around the ankle, and I have ended on my 6/0 type seed bead or type of bead here. I'm going to go ahead and pick up one of my crimp beads, and then I'm going to pick up another 6/0 type seed bead, my 4mm round metals here, and let me get over here so you guys can see what I'm doing. I am then going to pick up my piece of chain, and I'm just going to make sure the last link is closed nicely, and it is. Then I'm going to go into that last link like so. Then I'm going to go through my round bead here, and then into the crimp bead and into the other 6/0 seed bead. You can go down several of the 8/0s too if you'd like, or you can just end going through at the 6/0 like so. Make sure you don't have a whole bunch of slack here. You will have a little bit of movement simply because of the way I've designed it with the 6/0s that will slide over the crimp bead. So you don't really have to make sure you have a bunch of movement on your wire. Now make sure that your loop down on this side isn't huge, about the same size as the other side. The loop that goes into the chain is what I'm talking about. Make sure that you kind of compare them and you have about the same size. And then once you've done that, again, you will pick up your crimp pliers or your crimp tool, lay the flat part against where the beads, the main bulk of the beads are, and put it in the second divot closest to the handle and squeeze. And then turn, go into the first divot on the crimp tool and squeeze again. Now we will cut off the excess wire. And if you want to, you can make some kind of cute little decoration and put it on the end too so that it dangles off the chain if you'd like. Let me back off. And this is what you will have. And I will post a picture of it on the foot so you can see what it looks like, but that's what it looks like. Now this one, I've noticed I made a couple mistakes when I was designing it, so I'm going to remake it because I've got a couple extra beads here, and then I will show these as a set on the feet. And this is what they look like on the feet. Now I'm outside on my patio, so you can't really see exactly the screen perfectly, but I'm hoping you can see what they look like. Let's zoom in a little. Don't laugh at my ugly feet. And there you have it.